If you grew up in the 70s or 80s, it's highly likely that you're a Star Wars fan and remember the feeling of walking into a toy store to get your hands on an action figure or two. Well, as an adult who still enjoys Star Wars, I wanted to recreate that feeling but with a replica prop from the movie. So let's get started. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I love inconsequential hand props, especially those from Star Wars like this droid collar that Han Solo always had hooked to his belt. So after finding a great resin casting on Etsy, I finally had a plan for how to paint it and display it. But first let's start with paint. After separating all the small bits and pieces, I took some double-faced tape and applied it to a scrap piece of MDF to hold all the greeblies in place while I paint them. For this prop I'm going with the brushed aluminum Alclad 2 lacquer paint. I used this on our Mandalorian Blaster video and I really think it looks the part. I poured some into my airbrush and it was time to get painting. Once everything had an even coat of paint, it was time to assemble, starting with this disc that's attached to the bottom of the droid collar. To ensure better adhesion, I've scuffed up the bottom with sandpaper before applying some CA glue and pressing the two parts together. Bit of touch-up paint to cover the areas I removed with the sandpaper, and then I could set it aside to dry before repeating this step for all the other greeblies. Now that it's completely assembled, I'm going to apply rub and buff to the parts of the prop I didn't mask off. I'll use a cotton swab to apply as well as buff the surface to help these parts stand out. You know I can't leave a Star Wars prop without some degree of weathering, and this piece is no exception. I'm going to use this umber wash to give the brushed aluminum finish a bit of a greasy look. Again, with a low air pressure, I'll use the airbrush to give a patchy wash over the entire piece, which later will get scuffed up with a bit of sandpaper to help give it even more character. The last thing I'll do is to get just a little bit more rub and buff on my finger and lightly apply it on the raised edges. Now I can set the prop aside and we'll talk about the vintage action figure card. There are a handful of templates available online, but for this I needed to do a bit of customization, since the Droid Caller is much larger than the typical figure. So with a bit of help from Google image search and some Photoshop magic, I was able to create this composite for my one-of-a-kind packaging. Then I sent it off to my local print shop while I looked for a piece of cardboard to help give it some rigidity. Off camera, I trimmed down the front and back images and found this thin piece of cardboard to put between them. Then I grabbed some Super 77 spray adhesive and applied it to the cardboard, then waited a minute before sticking the print to it. Then I flipped it over, made sure I had the right corner for the next printout, and repeated the process, making sure to really push down the print into the cardboard, especially around the edges. I once again trimmed down the backer card, but needed to round the corners. So for that I picked up one of these corner punches, which are great for this, but the one I have is designed for paper and not cardboard, which unfortunately I figured out after pushing the card into the punch. It rounded the edge, but it also left these teeth marks. So keep that in mind when buying a punch of any kind. My solution was to punch the card from the back so that the markings weren't visible from the front. It's not ideal, but it definitely got the job done. The last part of the project was to make the plastic blister for the Droid Caller to sit in. For this, I powered up my Formart 2 vacuum former, and using a 3D printed buck, I was able to make myself a custom-sized blister. What's great is that I didn't need to use a full sheet of plastic, because the Formart 2 can be customized to a few different standard sizes, so that I can minimize waste and only use what I need. I preheated the machine, put the plastic into the frame, my buck onto the exhaust plate, and within a few minutes, I had a perfect blister for my prop. Now that I've got my backer card, the plastic blister, and the prop, the last thing to do is glue it in place and let it dry. And there you have it, one custom vintage action figure style droid collar prop replica. That was a fun one. It's definitely outside of our usual videos, but I hope you enjoyed the project and maybe it sparked an idea for something you've had on your to-do list. Well, that's gonna do it for me. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video, and most importantly, go make something.